I've reached a point where I am so over games being cluttered, or falling prey to bigger is better. Sometimes I just want a simple, straightforward story with an enjoyable cast, and I couldn't have been happier to stumble into Final Fantasy V. I happened to get my hands on a Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster, which was my first introduction to this delightful game. In a lovely castle, a father leaves his daughter to check on the wind crystal as something is amiss. We get flashes to our future heroes, one commanding a band of pirates, the other alone during an earthquake, and our main hero Bartz and his Chocobo, Boko, chilling at a campfire. Suddenly, the sky is falling. A meteor crashes and naturally you gotta check it out. You save a young girl, Lena, and discover a man with amnesia who only remembers his name, Galf. Agreeing to help them leads you to your final party member, Ferris, the leader of the pirates. As quickly as you get your cast, it is just as quick as the story pops off. The crystals are shattering, and the first stop is the wind crystal. And while you're powerless to stop the crystal from bursting, it turns out to be a serendipitous affair, with each crystal explosion leaves you with crystal shards imbued with the power of legendary warriors. Bartz and friends are now on a quest to stop crystals from shattering and releasing the seal on a great evil. I know the story is commonplace and simplistic, no doubt everybody has heard it before, but it's about the journey, not the destination. And this is where a lot of the characters pick up the slack that similar stories may have. We've all heard a great malevolence was sealed away and now coming back to cast the world into darkness, but it's the characters and their banter, their personal growth, and how they solve things. Like, if we put the cast of Tales of Berseria in Final Fantasy V, it would feel very different, because characters would approach things antagonistically. It's amazing how you can have the same story of saving the world, but still feel drastically different from any other. And while the cast is commonplace, Bart's a standard hero, but has a youthful goofiness to him. Galf, my favorite character, a spry old man with amnesia, sometimes at the most convenient times. Ferris, a very pretty captain of the pirates, respected by her lessers. And Lena, probably my least favorite, she's very typical princess, don't hate her, just didn't find her particularly interesting compared to her allies. And shout out to the best NPC I've encountered in a while, 2 of them in fact. Second place is actually the debut of this character, Gilgamesh. He's a very comedic villain. I love that you have casual conversations with him in battle. He's like one big joke, and every time I run into him, it's a pleasure. But the best is Guido. He is so funny. Him and Bart's banter is just delightful. He's an old turtle who's been through some stuff, which leads to him being so sassy and straightforward. And I can't tell a lie, Bartz, Galf, and Guido carry this for me. They're my trio. They're my squad. I just love everything about them together. Ferris's character fell off for me a bit once their true origins were discovered. They're still badass and they do have a sense of humor. I just wish the pirate shtick was a little stronger. But now we get to what Final Fantasy V is highlighted for, which is a shame because both characters and story are enjoyable. If you are remotely familiar with Bravely Default, then Final Fantasy V should be very easy to figure out. In fact, you could say this game is the blueprint of Bravely Default. Y'all know I'm a sucker for job systems, building sick nasty characters and putting them to work. Every character is a blank slate, and as you investigate each crystal, you're bitterly rewarded with crystal shards. This gives you jobs: black mage, white mage, knight, thief, etc. The job adjusts your stats to benefit that job. You're given 2 slots. One slot is fixed by your main job, like black mages will always be able to cast black magic. Thieves will always be able to steal. Then you have a second slot to put whatever you like. As you level up jobs, you'll be granted abilities that correspond to that job. So let's say you want to be a knight who can cast white magic. Well, as long as you level up the white mage class, you'll be able to do so. Every class also has passive skills, like a knight will automatically cover for characters with low health, so there's no reason to equip a knight with the cover ability. Another way to build is through equipment. Each class can equip certain weapons, armors, and accessories. Oftentimes, you'll be faced with sacrificing good defense for protection against the elements and status effects. The variety of enemies and bosses Final Fantasy V has are all puzzles. Bosses who are weak against magic, strong against physical, bosses who reflect, dish out all sorts of status effects, counter, you name it, Final Fantasy V has got it. People say Final Fantasy V is one of the harder ones, and I don't know about that. It's only difficult if you fail to have the right setup. So yes, dying may be frequent, but only because you're ill-prepared. Once you understand your enemy, it's pretty easy to counter. Let it be known you're supposed to switch jobs often, and you could still win with the wrong party, it just might be a bit of an uphill battle. But if geared up correctly, you will stomp out the enemies in record time. Some jobs take up a lot of job experience to level up, and Final Fantasy V is cheap, like super cheap, with its job experience. Thankfully, you could boost experience and money in the Pixel Remaster to smoothen your playthrough. The only thing I felt needed adjusting was the job experience. Outside of job classes, your standard level doesn't matter much. It's always cool to see numbers go up. Unless your next level is a multiple of 5 and you run into monsters that can cast the level 5 death spell, but that's not here or there. Also, I think Final Fantasy V does a great job encouraging experimentation, not just with jobs but also abilities, or testing what does and doesn't work against certain bosses. Just things you want to think about, like casting Reflect means heal spells will also get reflected, using spells like Gravity, which feel like they often miss but actually are great with spongy enemies, or attacking yourself or other teammates. There are just so many fun ways to play and break the system, and you may be surprised at what some bosses are susceptible to. Trust me, as someone who hates quote-unquote wasting a turn trying to see if you could give a boss a status effect, you may be pleasantly surprised. Which brings me to a minor nitpick like the aforementioned status effects. You can see them on your party along with a little note by your stats, but for enemies you have no idea how long they're asleep or stopped for. I wish there was a little visual telling. The only one we really get is confused. And secondly, I wish the translation was updated when it came to item and spell descriptions. Now, I got so excited to talk about job systems, I forgot to mention Final Fantasy V uses the attack time battle system, aka ATB, meaning you could do an action every time the gauge fills up. If that's not your speed, you could play on wait mode, which pauses all gauges as you decide what your next move is. I'm a fan of high stress situations in my game, so I took that off immediately, which resulted in the occasional hasty misclick. A new addition in the Pixel Remaster I found useful was a speed up mode. All gauges fill up faster, and when full, characters perform the same move they did last. A very useful feature for grinding. Another useful feature that saved me several headaches is during exploration. Each new area in the game autosaves, so if you're in a pesky dungeon that loves its death spells and you die, you don't have to start all the way from the last save point, or in some cases at the very beginning. Those who played this on the SNES, bless your heart. Another is toggling encounters on and off. Random encounters are a thing, and I'm sure we've all been through it, where we just want to get to the next save point, or out of a dungeon, and you're nearly there, an encounter hits and you die. Or just going through dungeons with trial and error and the flow is interrupted by a pesky encounter. Don't have to deal with that anymore. Endgame exploration in Final Fantasy V is so much fun. Exciting to revisit towns, play pianos, run into unique situations, find secret bosses, hidden passageways. It's just a grand old time. The game rewards well for those with a keen eye and a sense of adventure. Even some exploration was a puzzle, and also how the world was so big and well crafted. Final Fantasy V didn't only lend a hand in the creation of Bravely Default, but in terms of the world building, I think Final Fantasy VI owes 5 a lot. So now let me tell you about these gorgeous pixel remasters, and I mean, wow, I am so glad they didn't smudge the pixels, kind of what they did with the Grandia remasters. The pixels are sharp, bold colors, the expressions are faithful to the original, and you know what, this ties into my simplicity comment earlier. You could see when the characters are surprised or sad, happy through simple motions. You don't need hundreds of thousands of polygons to make something look good. And by the way, Pixel Remaster aside, the original looked great, and the Pixel Remaster just enhanced what was already there. Also, details a bit sharper. I think the original could look a little muddy, especially after seeing a side-by-side comparison. Also, I think some scenes were made stronger, like take the whirlpool. Before, it's this dinky little thing, but in the remaster, it's something to be feared. The Pixel Remaster is gorgeous, and this version really captures what many would have seen and felt as children. The limitations of the SNES being a thing of the past, I think out of all the versions, Famicom, PlayStation, Game Boy Advance, Steam, Mobile, or Pixel Remaster sweeps. Game Boy Advance actually being my second favorite. I like the extra detail of the highlights and characters and clothing. But enough about that, because man oh man, do Final Fantasy soundtracks miss? Well, yes, but not this one. Final Fantasy V's music is amazing, composed by the legendary Nobuo Uematsu. Fun fact, this was the first orchestral recording of the soundtrack, and it's lovely. But if you're not a fan, and you'd be wrong not to be one, you could switch between the orchestral and the original with ease. I actually did this a lot, just periodically, especially through songs I enjoy. I kind of flip-flop between what I enjoy more. It depends on the song though. I find myself mostly leaning into the orchestral sound. I think it often sounds bolder. Like one of the best tracks is Walking in Snowy Mountains. Like, bro, this was the most epic mountain climbing I've ever done. Uematsu oversaw the rescoring, and my mans did not play around. In fact, this was the first song, I think, that gave me genuine pause. Oh, we can't not talk about Battle on the Big Bridge. Lord, was Uematsu's hands on fire when he wrote this? Okay, last one, then I'll stop. I'll say Sealed Away. I just love the consistent drums and the wind instruments just carry me away. It feels mysterious, magical, and we even have some very faint vocals in the background. The point is, the music's great. Boss battle themes, town themes, overworld themes, it's all great. As much as I would love to talk about the Cursed Lands or Ancient Library, we gotta move on. No longer will I say Final Fantasy IX is the underrated Final Fantasy. No. Sure, it was shafted by Final Fantasy X that was on newer and shinier hardware, but Final Fantasy V was just forgotten about. And that is a crime. And you're under arrest. Behold my new and improved Final Fantasy list, and these are the ones I've played. I haven't played all of them, so like, don't get your knickers in a twist. I haven't played Final Fantasy VII. Stay mad. Tell me how mad you are at me in the comments. First and second place are pretty stable. Final Fantasy IX, Final Fantasy IV. Third place is Final Fantasy X. Could be contested with Final Fantasy V, I'll say that. But definitively, fifth place is Final Fantasy VI. Yes, I know, a crime. Take me to jail, officer. The other Final Fantasies I've played were 8, 12, and 16. If I had to continue the list, it would be 16, 8, 12. Yeah. Final Fantasy XII is one of the most boring games ever, and I am so sorry if it's your favorite. Anyways, if you want to see more Final Fantasy reviews, particularly on 4 and 9, my favorites, click here. And be sure to support me on Patreon, and look forward to my first list video of the year, baby. Best villains in JRPGs. Also, don't forget to subscrizzle, and I'll see you in the next video. Mwah!